Well, those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Pastor Ballard. And I was here back in 2001 to 2008 with this wonderful congregation here in the Dalles. And I've actually known Essie and Elden for about 20 years now, as just being around them, and what a blessing to have that. My part of it is the life sketch, and I want to just share with you that this is not what I would consider a normal life sketch, because you actually have in your bulletin the close example of a life sketch that you can take and read it here, so I'm not going to repeat those parts of it. But what I am going to do is I'm going to cover my experience through the years that I was here and post some of those times. Also talking about what each of the children felt and shared some stories, and then also my wife, who stayed with her for a number of years. After we left, my wife decided that she wanted to stay working at the hospital and needed a place to stay, and so she stayed on, and it went from year after year after year. It ended up lasting almost, 12 years, something like that. And so we have a very tight connection with the Elletts. And so I want to just share this with you as I start off with. When I think about Essie and Elden, I don't know why this is, but I think of a Norman Rockwell picture. I don't know if you get this, but I do. You go to their house and you cannot help but think that way, because these people are like the salt of the earth. The goodness just comes out of them. I swear, when they sweat, it's goodness coming out. And I'm talking about supportiveness and all the things that go on, but one of the things is just driving up to their house, with the wagon wheels and just the mailbox and the old car, and you just get this feeling like we're going back in time here to just good old-fashioned folks. Everybody agree with me on that? Is that what you felt? Yeah. Yet at the same time, they were heavily involved in the church. In fact, I don't know if you can totally separate Essie and Elden from the church. They were so intricately connected that it was one and the same thing. I remember one time that I stayed the night at their house, and they took me down the hallway to the bedroom. And if anyone has been in their house, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I noticed off of my peripheral vision that the ceiling wasn't quite normal. Looking up, I saw hats. And more hats. And as they took me around, I saw hats on top of hats on top of hats. In fact, I've never been even a hat shop that had that many hats. I don't know how that all got started, but I do know that they had, was it 3,000, something like that, hats? I don't know what the exact number was. I'm sure somebody counted them, but that's a lot of hats. Which made it kind of interesting, because one time I went to the house and I was helping them do something, and I had forgotten my hat, and I just mentioned, boy, it's hot today, I forgot my hat. And both Essie and Elden both just cracked up and says, well, you've come to the right place. Next thing you know, Essie shows up with about 12 hats. And she says, which one would you like to wear? I said, just one that covers this head of mine. And, but that's the kind of people they were, though. It's just right there all the time with you. And I really enjoyed that. From the time I saw Essie and Elden the last time, I've always felt welcomed, appreciated, supported, and felt like I was important. And I will just tell you, sometimes you feel that as a pastor, but I will tell you that went way beyond being a pastor. It was really who they were as a couple, as individuals. We didn't always agree about everything, but what was always interesting was as we would talk and as we would share, what was interesting is that we might share disagreements, but they would always come back, either one individually or collectively. They would come back and say, We may not agree on this, but we will do what's best for the church or what you feel that you think God is leading us to. We're with you. And that was always that way. With Eldon, I had a chance to share together as him being an elder. And I will tell you that this church alone has some of the finest elders I've ever served with. Amen. Really, it's an amazing group of elders in this church. But Eldon was one, well, he wasn't exactly your upfront speaker type, although he would get up front for little things. That wasn't his forte. But he would tell me over and again, you want to go visiting? I'm with you. You just name the time and place, I'm there. He loved visiting with people in their homes. To sit there and talk and to share. He didn't like to necessarily do it alone, but he liked to do it with me. And so every chance I got, I would go and do that. One thing about Elden is that when you come to the... I can speak of this one. Go ahead and turn it on. Is this on now? Okay. Going back on this one. All right, and turn it back off. One thing about Elden is we would come to the elders' meetings, and we would, every time, we would have a time of prayer. Pray specifically for certain individuals, certain circumstances. Eldon always reached inside his Bible. He would pull out a list of names he was always praying for. Now, I've seen lists before, but never that long. If you wanted to have somebody pray at church, please pray for me. He wrote it down. His prayer was genuinely always acting to the needs of the church. And it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'll pray for you. No, he wrote it down so he could pray for them every single day. What was interesting is every time we go to prayer meeting, he'd write down more names. Every elders meeting, write down more names. Come to church, write down more names. But one thing about Eldon is that he actually asked me one time, apparently he had been praying for some time for some of the people on the names, list of names he had, and he goes, Pastor, I just don't know if my prayers are being answered right now. I just don't see anything really happening. And he goes, am I not having enough faith? Am I not believing enough? Am I not praying hard enough? I assured him that not only was God hearing his prayers, because I didn't know of anybody who was that dedicated to make sure people were prayed for. Not only that, I assured him that we also need to wait for God's timing. And I said, if you're having questions, I want you to do something. And he says, what's that? And I said, I want you to actually pray to God and say, Lord, I want you to make it known to me that this prayer these prayers that I'm asking for, that you reveal that you're actually hearing those and answering those. Or show me something that I can say, yes, Lord, without a doubt. Not that you've done everything, just one little piece, just one time, just please, let me see this. And he goes, okay, I can do that. So he started praying for it. Well, I get this phone call about 3 weeks later. It says, come visit me. In that tone, come visit me. So I went over to him as soon as I could. I went over to his house and he walked in and he said, I've been praying. I prayed what you told me to pray. And you would not believe what happened. He never would tell me what happened. I have no idea to this day what happened. All I know is that God revealed to him that his prayers were being answered. And it just fired him up for adding more people to the list. When I think also about the discussions that we had early on, in the early 2000s there, I was just mentioning to somebody that they knew for some time, actually for like 15 years, that the Dalles needed to have a new church at that point in 2001. And I've been to some classes where they said, when a church is about 85% full, you need to expand. And if we were looking right now, you guys might want to start considering expanding if everyone keeps coming. Sorry. But anyway, they were saying, but if it gets full like that, because it'll grow to full potential, but then shrink back. And so I remember approaching to the elders and to the church board, and then eventually the church business session, that maybe we should look at buying a church, building a church, expanding the church, doing something. And I remember the conversation was, we don't have the money. You know, with the church budget the way it is, we just can't save enough. And at that time, they had just a few thousand that were in the coffers. And as we looked at that and going, this is just not going to happen. I remember I just talked with the conference treasurer, and he says, listen, one thing that I've learned is that you don't do it through church budgets. There are many pockets. Every family has many pockets. Like you might have a pocket for going out to eat, or for buying gifts, or for doing this. And he says, challenge your church to find ways to save money, that they could put money into the building fund. Tell your church to look for ways that maybe God can answer something in another way and put that money into the building fund. And I remember that we did that, and money started coming in. And it was actually within a short period of time more than what was already in the books. And it was kind of exciting. But as we were doing that, I remember we got back together in another business meeting as we were talking about these things. And I remember Eldon in the back piped up and he said, I don't like what's going on. And it kind of shocked me. I didn't expect that coming from him because he's usually pretty quiet. And he goes, I don't like what's going on. And so I just stopped the meeting and says, can you explain? And he says, I don't like what's going on because we should have been doing this years ago. It's pretty sweet, isn't it? He was an amazing guy. And I'm going to miss him very much. When I think of some of the things that, when I think about Essie, and I think about the things that she was like, to me she was like having another mom. I don't know if that was her intention, that I need to have a mom, but what it was like having another mom. She really truly cared and looked out for the well-being of myself and others around. If I were to ask her anything, she would say, leave it to me, consider it done, and I'll make it happen. Well, I got to the point where I was actually trying to be watched out for her because she tended to get herself involved in things and tended to kind of overdo. You know what I mean? So one day I tried to approach that subject with her. I shouldn't have done that. In a really nice way, she told me to mind my own business. But she would just, then she came back and she basically said this. She says, listen, if it needs to be done, I'll do it, because that's what God's called me to do, is to step in that gap and make it happen. Many of you know that she was, as mentioned, a pretty good cook. Yeah, I'm going to miss her food. Been missing it for a long time, actually. She's amazing, and but I also know that she also often linked up with Nola, her niece, and they would cook together, they would decorate together, they worked together, they did all kinds of things together. Sometimes I felt that they were almost Siamese twins, where they would hang out together, but they would make things happen. And that was pretty awesome to watch. She was always unique in the way that she would approach things. I watched her grow as an individual through the years. From places where she knew that there were rough areas of her character, watching that soften and change over the years. And those of you who know, you know what I'm talking about. Heart of gold, absolutely a heart of gold. But she grew as a person and became a very beautiful person in the end here. I'm going to mention a couple of things here from a few other individuals, like, for instance, Glory. She's responded to my request for this, and she writes this: when my dad prayed, I always felt God there beside us. My favorite was when my mom prayed and God answered her prayers, and then she would share with us. Like when her car broke down once, she prayed and her car started, and then the next stop, it broke down again. And then she prayed and the car worked again. And then it happened 3 times. And finally, she had to call a tow truck, but she was at a place where it was a safe spot and a good spot for that tow truck to be able to come and take the car. It's things like that, isn't it, that reminds you of a woman who really had a relationship with God and trusted. She also indicated that, and I didn't even know this is news to me, that she missed Aunt Helen and Essie singing together. So apparently you guys must have done a lot of singing together for church. Yeah, and she missed that. What was that? Oh, joy accompanied that. Oh, I bet that was good. Laura recalls that her dad, when she was much younger and smaller, asked me if I wanted to go and help gas up the construction truck. And before, she goes, I really knew what was going on, I would find money on the ground. Later I learned that my dad was tossing money out on the ground so she could find it. I like that. Lori also recalls her dad used to say, hey, look outside. And she'd look outside and then he'd reach over and steal stuff off her plate. Just makes me like Elden even more. Doug, their son, responded as well. He said he wishes he had a photo of his mom playing his big old drum set. And I agree. I wish I could see that. That would be something. His dad told him once, even though they had become vegetarian for several years, that he still missed some of the meat dishes Essie used to cook. Because I'm guessing she just didn't become a good cook for a vegetarian. She must have been a good cook with the meats as well. When Doug was in Japan one time, he says that when he was with his band, I didn't even know he was with a band, but apparently he was, he missed his train, and he called home and was in kind of a panic. And Essie and Eldon went over to the old encyclopedias, pulled them out, found Japan, and began to spell out the names of the cities that he needed to go from one place to another to get to the destination he needed to get to. I thought that was pretty good. His dad told him he loved building virgin roads to see what was on the other side of the hill. And I could see that. Doug remembers his dad searching through stores looking for the exact card that would express his feelings for Essie. The exact card. That exactness is so special. He also says he has no idea how many hours his folks volunteered at the church and school projects. He knew that his Uncle Jim donated the material, and Eldon and Dave Cox and Larry Wagman built the playground equipment. That's still there, I believe, isn't it? Yeah. In the old days, if you were playing games at the kitchen table, we had to whisper if Eldon had to go to bed. Not anymore. And Essie and I played games for hours these last few years, he said. Essie and Eldon also loved going to her sister's cabin at Pacific City and always lamented that it had gotten sold. But that was actually renowned, because I know even in Academy we heard about the cabin and stuff that we'd go to. It's a pretty special place. Essie loved putting on showers, Tupperware, and other parties at their house. She loved just getting people together, and I had no doubt in my mind every single one of them had food. Doug says he wished he could cook like her. He has some of her recipes, but he says it just never tastes the same. And then I have here from Amanda. It said, my mama and I bonded so close from the beginning. I don't even remember calling her anything except mama from the moment I could talk. She had such a strong maternal protective instinct over me. I don't remember how old I was, but I remember lots of times they would let me drive the riding lawnmower around the property for fun. My legs were too short, so I couldn't hold the brake down while shifting it into gear. So Papa would start it and then let me go. Well, one day he thought I could handle it on the fastest speed. I took off, and he went back inside. I'm not sure what happened, but going down the driveway, I lost control a little bit and started heading straight for the embankment and was trying to reach the brake. I don't know how she moves so fast, but Mama Essie had seen me from the kitchen window and came running down the driveway like an Olympic runner, stopped the mower right before I went over the bank into the road. You can just picture, I can actually picture this because we had a church outing once, is before 9/11, and it was over at the Dalles Dam Park. And we were over there for a church service. And I remember we had gotten done with the church service and we were getting ready to get up and we were heading back to eat lunch. And we couldn't get everybody to move. And I'm not sure exactly whether this is something God orchestrated or it just happens to be on a timer, but the sprinkler system kicked on. I've never seen people in our church family run so fast in my life. And Essie was one of them. Do you guys remember that? Any of you? Yeah, that was great. I think the best example of how much we loved each other was our reactions to being apart. Of course, I went through a phase when I struggled with being different from everyone else and living with my grandparents instead of my birth parents. I think everyone goes through that, and I know she understood and forgave me. Before I lived with her, though, my mom would take me to visit, and it was always an ordeal to get me to leave. I have memories of my mom trying to put me in my car seat and me just wailing and wanting to stay with my mom. Then I grew up, and every time I would visit, when I was leaving, she would stand in the garage and wave. She cried every time. I remember she admitted that she would go inside and cry when I left. At the time, I felt frustrated because that made me feel guilty. I didn't want to feel guilty, but now looking back, it just shows me how much she loved me. I was her girl. There's one more that I want to share with you here, and this is coming from my wife. Because of knowing her for 20 years, and she stayed with her just about every month. There's maybe one or two exceptions, but almost every month, sometimes even twice a month, once in a while even 3 times a month, she would stay with her. And so we have this view, this understanding, and so I want to share this with you. But our experience with Essie actually started the moment we arrived. Listen to this. My wife says, the first time I met Essie was when we moved to the Dalles and into our apartment. My husband had arranged for Mrs. Essie to come and get our baby Kyle. Now I want to just pause here for a second. That was actually Essie's idea, not mine. So I will continue the story. To get our baby Kyle. By the way, Kyle, you raise your hand. Right there. He was what, how old was he when we came? 18 months. 17, something like that. When she came over, she said, I'm here to get your baby, Kyle, and take him to my house. I had no idea who she was and was very upset with my husband. Very upset. And after she had left, I let him know all about it. Needless to say, he never did that again. Unless he talked about it to me first. Also, I learned how trustworthy Mrs. Essie was. And I had absolutely nothing to be worried about. And later on, all 3 of my kids were taken care of by her and by Amanda. They loved our children, and our children loved them. She was one of their Sabbath school teachers for all 7.5 years we were pastoring here in the Dalles. And she always had new stickers for them to use and little snacks for them to help them get through till that lunchtime. I just want to also say, Essie was downstairs. I don't know how many years she taught downstairs. But one year she came to me, she says, is there any possibility I could be like an adult? And I told her I'll try, and we tried best to get her upstairs, but it just, we didn't have enough teachers, and she ended up going back down there. I even volunteered to do some of it myself, and she said, You're the pastor. You're supposed to be upstairs. Okay. As a family, we would be invited over to Miss Essie and Mr. Elden's house on an occasional Sabbath. She would fix delicious food. My favorite things would be her Huckleberry Peach Crisp. Anybody have that one? Wow. She never let anyone do the dishes afterwards either, because she had this belief of not washing dishes until the Sabbath hours were over. And she also didn't like guests doing them. She did everything by hand because they didn't have a dishwasher. Many of you know that I stayed with her and Mr. Elden when I worked in the Dalles. This was pretty much monthly for 12 years, even though I lived in McMinnville with my family. I had a hard time letting go of my friends, Mrs. Essie and Mr. Elden, and friends of the church of whom I was able to see during prayer meetings, and I didn't want to stop working at Salilo either. Finally, after staying with her for probably the first year, she finally allowed me to wash the dishes, even though that was hard for her to let me do it, because she was always wanting to take care of her guests. I convinced her finally that I was not a guest anymore, it was family. So we became family after that. Besides, I told her she fixed the food, and the least I could do was to wash the dishes. And for her, and we could sit down and watch Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune together. They faithfully did that. No one would miss it. She would always have freshly laundered sheets on my bed and fresh towels up. I also finally convinced her she didn't need to do that either, as I was now family. So she'd only do it whenever there was a guest that would come and leave. She didn't just take care of her human guests. She would also take care of all God's creatures. She placed bread and veggies and any leftovers fit for wildlife out on a large rock outside her large window. I love watching the porcupines, the raccoons, the deer, the skunk, the wild turkeys all come to eat at different times, but at least one or two different kinds of creatures would come and eat at the outdoor rock table, and I could watch it through the large window. She would fill up the fish bag with seeds frequently. It seemed she had about 4 bird feeders up and was always filling them up. And she would call them her little piggies. Every night for supper, Elden would bring up chocolate and milk to share, and after supper, a single miniature milk chocolate Reese's peanut butter cup for each one of us. Essie wanted to go make sure that everyone was staying healthy, so she actually switched it to dark chocolate. Every night, Mr. Elden would remove Essie's socks for her with such sweetness and love for her, and she would always make sure she had his clothes in the bathroom ready for him in the morning. Talk about care. And the bathroom heater on as well, so that everyone would be comfortable. Mr. Elden always had a big smile on his face when I would come and spend time with him, and always made me feel like I was appreciated for coming. Each time he would ask me when I was coming again. He would fill the wood stove each night just to make sure that it was just going to be warm enough and comfortable. And then we would talk each night about what I was going to do for a job, or talk about heaven, or what I would be, or how my family was doing. Finally, Mrs. Essie, knowing that I was not much of a night owl, would send me off to bed at 9 p.m. If she didn't, I would eventually end up falling asleep on the chair. They often fell asleep on the chair as well. Each morning I would wake up and walk down the hall to take a shower, and there was Mrs. Essie sitting in her chair with her Bible open, and sometimes find her dozing. She loved God so much. She would talk about Him every night and would often pray together in the morning. She was a prayer warrior for her family and for her church family. She loved all of you so much. I watched her, as the years went by, develop a deeper and deeper, sweeter and sweeter walk with God. She would talk with Jesus and always ask Him to make her safe to save. I have no doubt that for myself and my own family, when I pray, I have adopted that for myself and my family when I pray. I learned so much from this beautiful couple. They shine God's love to me constantly. I am grateful I had all these years with them. It was a gift from God to me, so they were instrumental in different subject here. They were also instrumental in building this church. Many of you know the intricacies and the amount of effort that they put into planting, helping, fundraising, supporting, all along the way. I know that for myself, as I think and just think about them not being here, it hurts my heart. Especially in the dedication of this church, that have their heart and their minds, they wanted so desperately to be here for the dedication. But on the other side of things, I think about this. Many times there were people in the scriptures who God promised things to. And they loved God. And they didn't also get to see the fulfillment. Abraham didn't get to see the fulfillment of all those promises. David didn't get to see the fulfillment of those promises. But they knew it was real and they knew it was true. And I just want to end this part of it by saying this. Essie knows the promises of God. Amen. She knew them deep. Eldon knew the promises of God. Deep within their heart. And they know God is coming back for them. Thank you, Lord, for their lives.
Jesus steps out on a cloud to call his children. The dead in Christ shall rise to meet him in the air, and then those that remain shall be quickly changed. At the midnight cry, when Jesus comes again, and then those that remain shall be quickly changed. At the midnight cry, when Jesus comes again. At the midnight cry, when Jesus comes again. Comes
Life is far too short, isn't it? And unfortunately, we're getting calloused to death, especially as we read or listen to the evening news about the COVID deaths. But when people that are near and dear to us pass away, it really hits home, doesn't it? It really hits home. That's when it begins to be real to us, that life is far too short. Essie and Elden were the heart of the Dallas Seventh-day Adventist Church. For, this is hard to believe, for more than a half century. It's always hard to lose someone we love, but when it's someone near and dear to us, it's especially hard. It's heart-wrenching, especially since they were both so looking forward to, longing to see this church completed. What a blessing to hear Elden pray. You knew he was talking to a friend when he prayed. And Essie was so faithful. She worked really hard to win her pastor over to her cookies. When I come to board meeting, I generally didn't partake. Well, when she found out that her pastor didn't like peanut butter, there was always some special cookies there that didn't have peanut butter in them. And boy, after that, I had to take some. Let me share just a few words of comfort with you, words of hope. They're promises. They're words about God and what is he really like. I'm going to start with Exodus 34 and verse 6. When Moses went up to Mount Sinai, God revealed himself to him. And Exodus 34:6 says, "And when the Lord passed before him and proclaimed the Lord God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering, and abounding in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin." Notice in those verses, the first word describing God was merciful. And verse 7 says, keeping mercy for thousands. God's mercy is always there. Listen to what Jeremiah had to say. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. Lamentations 3. As a pastor, I most often am called on to eulogize the person who has passed. To eulogize means to speak well of someone or to highly praise someone. And sometimes that can be a little bit of a challenge, especially when the person that has passed has been a bit of a rascal. But it's certainly not hard to speak well of either Eldon or Essie, is it? I haven't heard that from Pastor Ballard. Their lives spoke for themselves. Their lives spoke of their faith and their trust in God. Oh, they weren't perfect. None of us are. We are in continual need of his mercy. As Jeremiah said, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. Now listen to what King David had to say. Psalm 103, one of my favorite psalms. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all your iniquities, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from destruction and crowns you with loving kindness and tender mercies, who satisfies your mouth with good things so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. Verse 8, the Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in mercy. I like verse 10. He has not dealt with us according to our sins, nor punished us according to our iniquities. For as the heavens are high above the earth, so great is his mercy toward those who fear him. As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed his transgressions, our transgressions from us. As a father pities his children, so the Lord pities those who fear him. For he knows our frame and remembers that we are dust. As for man, his days are like grass. As a flower of the field, so he flourishes, and the wind passes over it, and it is gone, and its place remembers it no more. But the mercy of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting. Mercy. You see it over and over, don't you? How could we lose with a God like that? You know, Jesus gave many promises when he came to earth. He came to show us what God is really like. And that he is a promise-keeping, merciful God. Listen to this one. You know this one. In fact, you know, I see there's a lot of members of church here, and I'm tempted to just say, why don't you repeat this with me? You know it that well. It's John 14, 1 through 3. And you join me if you'd like to. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. Isn't that a wonderful promise? He's coming back. This God of mercy and love is coming to rescue us from a dying world. When he returns, there's a resurrection. Well, I was almost to skip this verse, and I decided I couldn't. Let's see how the Apostle Paul talks about it in 1 Thessalonians 4. But I do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning those who have fallen asleep, lest you sorrow as others who have no hope. We're not sorrowing, are we? Because we have hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who sleep in Jesus. For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will by no means precede those who are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, and with the voice of the archangel, and the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Aren't you looking forward to that day? What a day that will be. And thus we will always be with the Lord. And then Paul ends by saying, therefore comfort one another with these words. What comforting words of hope those are. The Bible is full of promises. I read somewhere that there are about 3,600 promises in the Bible. And you'll be happy to know that I'm not going to share 3,600 more with you, but just one more promise, and it's the best one yet. And it's found in Revelation 21, beginning with verse 1. Revelation 21. This is a fantastic promise. Now, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no more sea. Then I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men. We don't use that word tabernacle anymore, do we? But what is it? It's a house or a church or it's a building, isn't it? The tabernacle, the dwelling place of God, is with men. Wow. And he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people. God himself will be their God. And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. I look forward to that, friends. Even though we are sad today, through the promises of God, we have really good news. And the hope of the resurrection and the soon return of Jesus. And friends, his heart is full of mercy and love for you today. Thank you to God for being the God he is.
So this is the part in this service where we get to participate. I know there are probably literally thousands of memories and recollections that are floating around this room right now. And we'd like to give everyone who would like to the opportunity to share something about Esther and Elden. But since there are quite a few of us here today, I'm going to ask that you be brief if possible. Brother Jim over here has the mic, and if you have something you'd like to say, just raise your hand and he'll get it to you. I already see hands going up, but before you give it to those folks, I have something I'd like to share. I get to be first. That's one of the benefits of getting to do this. So before you pay tribute to Eldon and Esther, and we'll try to be brief, but I want to give everybody as much of an opportunity as possible. I'd like to read Sister Helen's tribute to her sister and her brother-in-law. Here's what Helen had to say. Saying goodbye to two such important people in your life has been the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Essie was the one I could tell my darkest secrets to, besides my husband Jerry, discuss family or friend problems with, and know it would never go any farther. When a visit was over, we had the whole world set straight. She had so many family memories I was too young to know. We had to laugh when we both realized we had thought Mama and Daddy were old when they each died at 49, until we reached that milestone. Yes, it was Sister Dorothy that raised us young ones, but it is Esther's memories that I treasure. Essie and Eldon took me arrowhead hunting in Eldon's old Willie's. And as he went across the hills, I just knew he was going to roll and kill us all. We never found any arrowheads because we ran into a rattler, and that ended the hunt. Helen really loves snakes. I always knew Eldon loved me by the way he was always willing to reach out and help. Him walking me down the aisle at Jerry's and my wedding is a precious memory. He, Eldon, always had a jab up his sleeve. Like reminding me that my Sudden Beauty hairspray didn't work. You know, as I've read that, Helen has been such a blessing to our church family. We've gotten to know her. And I was wondering, how could I be a blessing to Helen? Well, until Eldon is able to pick up where he left off, I decided that I will assume that mantle. That I will step into the breach. And the jabs, the ribbing, the teasing that Eldon used to do, I will do that. And I'll be ruthless. By the way, Helen, you don't still use that Sudden Beauty. Those who only knew Eldon and Esther in those later years missed a lot of spark and fun. Essie would never admit anything she was asked to do was too hard. They were both always right there when something needed to be done at the old church, the school, or the MPD. Eldon never bossed the job, though. He was only there to help. I have run through many memories working at their house these last few months and shed many a tear. I don't think the hole in my heart will ever heal until Jesus comes and gets us all back together. Amen to that, Sister Helen. So, that's Helen's tribute. I know that there are many of you who would like to say something, so Jim has the microphone, and we're going to start right here.
My name is Joe Hathaway, youngest brother of Essie. The first time I met Eldon, not having a father, he was special to me. A big man, and he drove a logging truck. I rode with him many times. He was gentle, soft-spoken. Where they ate meat, there was nobody to barbecue chicken like him. His faith was very evident, and it was mentioned that his prayer was like talking to a friend. When it's the Chevy Ford Lantern, I would show up at his house and he says, "Oh, I see you made it with your Chevy." I said, "Well, I would have been on time, except I had to pull out 2 Wrens and 4 Fords." Rest in peace, though. Essie, I knew Sheila. She was the epitome of love. She didn't make me feel loved every time I saw her. Oh man, her cooking, that has been talked about today. Lentil patties will never be equal. The time, effort, and energy she put into having this beautiful church built, to have Royal Memorial, is one of the saddest things I've ever faced. My lasting memory, the Wednesday night on her deathbed. She let everybody know that she loved Jesus. She wanted all 16 of us there in that little room to know that Jesus loved them. She so badly wanted everyone there to give their heart to Jesus so we could all be in heaven together. I'm going to try to do this rather quickly. There is one thing that cannot be missed in all of this: the sacrifice of an individual. My sister Ellett, she gave her heart and soul to make sure that they were at peace. A long time ago, it started on coming to the Dalles to take for a visit, doctor visit. Then it turned into overnight. Then it turned into, well, I'll move in and I'll stay here. Go home, and a couple of days later, we'd have to come back. In the end, searching for important documents, papers, titles to trailers, to cars to sell. Where's this money went? Where did this money come from? Why do I have this card? Why do I have that card? I want her to know what seemed like a thankless job. There are no words that show or express love for what she did. As I read the Bible, it may have been a thankless job, but her reward will be in heaven.
Someone else.
I remember Esther. She took me to church sometimes, and we always were sitting together. And Elden said, "Hi, Jody, how are you?" And I'm going, "Hi, how are you?" Every Sabbath, he always says that to me. He's sitting right there over by my right, and he always says hi to me. And I will always miss that.
So Essie never let me do the dishes, you know.
Some of you really know that.
I have a tribute that Reggie sent me. He's very sorry he couldn't be here. All right, I remember her when my husband had a stroke, and Ellen came over and bailed me out so many times. I wish I had had him more often to help me back the trailer because he's excellent in tutoring me. But Reggie unfortunately had to go to California. But he sent me an email just to read, so I'm going to read that. See, Essie and Elden have been a fixture in my whole life, as long as I can remember being there in the house. In fact, I can remember very few church services without them present. They were one of the pillars of the church here and a wonderful example of Christian hospitality to anyone that came here. Elden always had a story to tell and counsel to give. He would be the first to help my mom after my dad had his stroke. His trailer backing up skills was second to none. But Essie, on the other hand, now Essie knew the way to my heart. She could make the best haystacks ever. And she would come to the school here once a week and make a hot lunch for all the kids. But when she made haystacks, she made extras so that there was enough to go around. I mean, highly going and all. Even after my grade school years, if she knew I was going to be in town, she would make sure to invite me over for haystacks. I will certainly miss that, but mostly I will miss how sincere and loving they both were. Essie and Elden cared deeply for both their family and for the church family, and they had more than enough love and care for anyone else that might need it as well. I am glad to have been part of my life, and I know that they will have a special place in heaven where I look forward to seeing them again. And hopefully Essie has a big enough kitchen, because she's going to need a large kitchen to make the haystacks to feed us all. And I will miss her because she was a big part of my life.
We were neighbors. I lived not far away from Essie and Ellett, and I know they even watched for us. One time Essie went down by the road and she came yelling at my door and said, "Pano, your truck over there is on fire." I ran outside and sure enough it was on fire. I don't know how it came. And I went and took it off and I said, "Thank you very much, Essie. But you may know, Elden, a number of times when I talked to him at church, I said, "Elden, don't you think you're too old now to drive those big, heavy machines? It's time for you to retire." And he said, "Pano, I want to eat good." I said, "Elden, you got a lot more to eat good. It's time to retire."
My most recent memory of Essie is that while this pandemic was going on and everybody was home and we had the shutdowns and stuff, she started to write to me, and she wrote to me a few times into March too, and she always included Bible promise in those letters that she sent. And my favorite memory of Elden was when I was little. And every time he got up on the platform to pray, even as a child, I would listen for his first few words, and he would say, "Good morning, our Heavenly Father," and he knew he was talking to his best friend. I miss his prayers so much, and I just want all of you to know that his prayers, they have been answered, because I know that he prayed for me in some of the darkest times in my life, and I'm here today because of that. Thank you.
My father passed away in 1999, and we were members of the church here, and when I come to church, I told him one day that I was really glad he was here, because he kind of filled that void that was left, and that meant a lot to me. Like people have mentioned, his prayers were very important. And I've always been a person, when I come to church, there's people that I like to see. And even if I don't go talk to them every week, if they're not there, I miss them. And summers were tough, because Elden and Essie were off somewhere else doing roads. And so it was always nice when they came back home. And like El Cherie, the ambrosia that Essie would bring, or potluck, that was my dessert. And I just loved and appreciated both of them very much.
most of you guys know me, I've been with this church since I was a little girl. And Essie was kind of like my second mom. Her daughter and I were in we had best friends since kindergarten. We'd be getting into so much trouble. And no matter what we did, she always loved me unconditionally. Every weekend, or mostly every weekend, I spent a lot of time at Eldon's. I don't get me wrong, I love my parents, but I spent most of the time over there just because I loved her so much. I loved them both so much. They made me feel so welcome. But I think the best memories that I've had is when we used to go to the house during Pathfinders, and she would do cake decorating, or on Sabbath morning, when she made breakfast, and I knew how to see but hear the music, and she'd be waking me and worry up. And I could just smell the waffles and the breakfast, and I'm gonna really, really miss her so much, both of them.
I would like to see a show of hands. How many people here got birthday cards from Essie? Look around here. She never forgot birthdays.
Anniversaries.
Or anniversaries.
Yeah.
I know how Essie felt. We both did cradle roll for several years in the basement of the old church. But I got to go upstairs and be an adult before she did. Anyway, we were like sisters all the time when I was here. And after I moved away, I always stopped to see them. But I would never leave their home without having Elden pray for me. That man could pray the most wonderful prayer to God. And I felt so blessed, and I never let me be without him praying for me.
Well, I can say that Essie drew the line at Mama, at least in my case. She mentioned to my wife that she was not old enough to be that man's mama. But she eventually came around, and I got cards, and my wife got cards, and she always wrote things on there that indicated that she had taken a motherly interest in our family, particularly after our parents died. But the reason I want to remember Essie is because of the quality of her counsel. I haven't really heard that mentioned. Both she and Nelson were good listeners. And like her sister said, if you told them something, it never went anywhere else. You could bank on that. But at the same time, they had counsel to give which was solid. I would call them godly people. I think that's the word I'm looking for. It sums everything else up. And I think we have lost a godly force in this church. And I also accept the fact that the rest of us are going to have to just pick up the slack. That's the way it is. And we're going to miss them.
I just want to express my appreciation to Elden and Essie too. I was out with Sheila at Pathfinders in their house and benefited from their hot lunches and their planning for games along with Joy, planning for games and things for the school, and I just have a lot of fond memories of them, even though I haven't seen them in a few years.
come and visit us so many times, and it was always a pleasure. She was always out there like it's been mentioned before. She always had her way as you know that out of sight. But the one thing about Sister was I missed her one time, and the candy, Halloween candy corn was my favorite candy. The next Halloween, here come a package in the mail with a little bag of candy corn in it. I loved her and missed her so much.
There are a few people that reach into the heart so far as Essie and Elden. I too enjoy those encouraging words and counsel. And I can say they're just some of the best, some of the very best Christian people I've ever known.
I moved here with my two children from San Francisco in 1988, and I became a member of this church for 21 years. There are a lot of things about this church. Even now, I've been in Portland since '09. Every now and then when I'm talking about the Russian church, or even Hope Church, where I belong, I always say the Welsh Church. And part of the reason is the people in this church, and especially people like Elden and Essie. I loved the time that we spend together as elders when I was here. And someone had mentioned already that when Elden is elder, he never misses. That's what he always says at the beginning. The order with Elder. Exactly how he says it. And then I miss the times that we spent together as elders in meetings and restaurants. And, it's just everything that I've heard about Essie and Elden is so true. It's nice to, I would say I grew up spiritually here in this church because of people like that. One thing I remember from Esther, I always remember her on Thanksgiving. Because I remember, I don't know if she told who I was with when she told me this. She said, you know, I'm a vegetarian all year, but on Thanksgiving, I don't miss my turkey. So I don't know if she was still doing that, because I've been gone since '09, but I remember that. And they're just great people. They make you feel loved and make you feel welcome.
We have time for maybe one or two more. Is there one or two more?
My name's Barbara. I am a niece of Elden and Essie and a cousin to Doug and Lori. Just for fun, I was remembering back to when Elden and Essie were living in Walla, and Joey and Jill were there also, and they were logging. So it was probably a short-term thing. They lived in a little single-wide trailer there. And for some reason, Nancy and I got sent down there for a short spell. Probably needed a break or something. Anyway, so Nancy and I went up with Elden in his logging truck. And we got to watch him loading logs. And that was so much fun. Well, when I had a full load and we were getting ready to head down, he goes, well, the best thing about these trucks is the horn. And they have a loop that you can pull. It was a giant air horn. goes, well, that's so that when we're going down, we can't really slow up so much that if people hear that horn, they know that they need to get off the road. So he goes, well, so if we see somebody coming, because we're coming from altitude down, then, we'll blow the horn, let them know we're coming. And so big eyes and like, he goes, well, that's the first, we weren't in grade school. This was before Doug and Lloyd. We were very young and very short, so of course there were no seat belts or anything like that, so you had to stand up to reach it. And, when he set that horn off, and he let us do that as much as we wanted. So, Lord knows the entire mountain community knew that we were on the road. And then, of course, when we got back, Essie had hot chocolate. Well, actually, I shouldn't say hot chocolate because she made cocoa. And I'm not entirely sure what that difference is, but it was cocoa. The other thing that everybody needs to remember about Essie, at least within our immediate family, is that she was a master practitioner of making panucci nuts. They were silky, soft, beautiful creations, and we've all made our singular attempts at them, and they're usually kind of granular and not these silky creations that Essie can make. So that's probably my fondest memory of her cooking. But Elden really was a title of fun when you gave him a chance.
How old was Eldon when he went to sleep? How old was Eldon? 89. 4 years ago, this is how much he liked his truck. He got in his pickup, because I didn't have a fifth wheel hitch. He drove up to Caiaphas, where I bought a fifth wheel. He drove down the mountainside, across the valley, up the mountainside to Goldendale, pulled it in, and backed it into a spot on our property. That was 4 years ago. 85 years old, he still got in a truck to work. He loved to help people.
My name is Angela, and I'm Essie and Elden's niece. And I really enjoyed the music we had today, and it brought back memories of the times that we would go to the organ Adventist men's chorus. And Essie and I would always end up sitting by each other, and we'd always get in trouble like Annie Helen. Because something would make us giggle, and it only took a tiny little bit. And do I have to get in between you two? And we looked at each other and said, yeah, because I don't think we're going to stop. And I always appreciate their love.
I thought it just really struck a memory when Pastor Ballard said, had like a Norman Rockwell picture at their place. I've known him for about 30 years. And years and years ago, we had an apple cider party making at our house, and they were there. And Essie, I love to garden, and she gave me this little picture frame of garden things on it. And that day when they were out, her and I took pitchforks, and somebody took a picture of us with these pitchforks and gray clothes from making apple cider and stuff. And that has been in my kitchen window for probably 25 years. It's getting faded and everything, but every time I'm at my kitchen counter, it's her and I in that picture frame. It's just such good memory.
So I've got one hand up here and then the on this one.
I wanted to say that there's a song that you guys us to sing, and it's called God Be With Us Till We Meet Again. And only one verse. We can do it maybe at the end. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the chance you're giving me to say something about Essie. As you all know, I am from the family, Ofisa family, and before the day is done, I want to share with you what my sisters have said to say. 3 of my sisters went to school here at the Seventh-day Adventist School, and Essie was one of the teacher's assistant at the school. Also, she was a lunch lady, and they said, before the day is done, make sure everyone hears what they have to say, that they miss her, and she is one of the best lady that serves lunch at school. Her lunches, best hot lunches at school, and she gives the best hugs on Sabbath day. And she does do the same to me. And we will dearly miss her, as well as Elden. And even though my sisters are not here, I'm sure Amanda would know how grateful they are to her grandmother. Thank you.
You know, just because this service concludes this afternoon, doesn't mean we stop sharing memories about those we love. That goes on forever. So we look forward to that time when Jesus comes again, and we get the opportunity to be again with those that we love. I can see by our little bulletin here that we have a closing song followed by a prayer.
Will you please open up your hymnals to 530 for our closing song, It Is Well With My Soul, 530.
Roll My name is Dave Ackerman. I'm at Essie and Ellen's nephew. My mom is her older sister. I'm not afraid of public speaking, but this is one of the most challenging things I've ever had to do. Because I hold Ellen and Essie as the Mount Rushmore of people I knew. Hall of Fame individuals, and I heard that echoed throughout this room, and it's how do you have a closing prayer following in the footsteps of Elden? What do you do? We're talking giants here. That being said, the music today, I didn't know that y'all hired professional musicians. Either that or the Angels jumped in, because I never heard anything like that at a service. I'm blown away. I've never sat in a memorial with the kind of words that I heard spoken that amazed me. But I think something that we can say unequivocally is that the reason that they grew to who they grew to be is because they were close friends with Jesus. Amen. And it was evident. It was everywhere. We heard it, so I won't go on about that. We know it. And as somebody said, we don't have to quit sharing. For myself, I'd like to give it a go. Try to emulate the kind of people they were. And my Aunt Essie came to visit my mom on her deathbed. And she was literally minutes, maybe an hour or so from passing. And Essie had to get back up to the Dalles. This was in Salem. She had to get back up here because she couldn't drive at night. And she leaned over and kissed my mom on her forehead. And she said, "I'll see you in the morning, sister." And now, we don't grieve when someone goes to sleep, but we grieve that gap. So we have that gap. But we also have that hope, and that hope is that the last enemy that was conquered is death. So, until the morning, let's bow our heads. Father in heaven, thank you for the gift of these dear people that have touched our lives so deeply. We are so grateful for what you did. It gives us hope. It gives us promise. We kind of come to a place here where words begin to lose their meaning. So our hearts just reach out to you. Thank you. Thank you for the gift of your Son. Thank you for the gift of these people. And may we strive to emulate your Son. May we strive to emulate the love that Essie and Elden gave each one of us. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Let's just stand and sing this before we go. We'll just do one verse. The first verse.